I should have been sitting in the front row at my daughter's wedding. After all, I'm the one who raised Sarah alone for 18 years, worked double shifts to pay for her college, and spent my life savings on this very wedding. But there I was, relegated to the third row, watching my ex-husband's new wife occupy the seat that should have been mine. Family seating is for immediate family only, the wedding coordinator had said with a practiced smile when I questioned the arrangement. Since Sarah's father remarried, his wife takes precedence as the current Mrs. Thompson. The words hit me like a slap. 25 years of marriage erased. 18 years of single motherhood dismissed. At 47, I felt every whispered comment from the guests behind me. Poor thing, replaced by a younger model. At least she got to walk Sarah down the aisle. Oh wait, that's just a father's privilege. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been the one teaching Sarah to walk, to ride a bike, to navigate heartbreak. Yet here I was, watching from the sidelines as if I were just another guest. My hands clenched the program so tightly it began to tear. This wasn't just about seating arrangements. This was about being erased from my own daughter's most important moment, pushed aside by traditions that seemed designed to make divorced mothers invisible. But as the music began and Sarah appeared at the back of the church, I had no idea that my new son-in-law was about to change everything. The months leading up to this moment had been a battlefield disguised as wedding planning. Every decision felt like a reminder of my diminished status in Sarah's life. When we went dress shopping, the boutique staff automatically addressed my ex-husband's wife, assuming she was the mother. When we tasted cakes, the vendor handed her the invoice. When we discussed seating charts, I watched my name get moved further and further from the head table. Mom, you understand, right? Sarah had said during one of our planning sessions, her voice carrying that apologetic tone I'd grown to dread. Dad's paying for most of the wedding, and Linda has been helping so much with the planning. Her words trailed off, but the message was clear. Money talks, and my teacher's salary whispered. I'd spent sleepless nights wondering how I'd become a supporting character in my own daughter's story. The woman who had bandaged scraped knees, attended every school play, and held Sarah through her first heartbreak was now being treated like a distant relative. The injustice of it burned in my chest like acid. But what hurt most wasn't the seating arrangement or the vendor assumptions. It was watching Sarah navigate between two families, trying to keep everyone happy while slowly erasing my contributions. When people asked about the wedding, they praised Linda's elegant taste and my ex-husband's generosity, my years of sacrifice, my dreams I'd put on hold, my identity as Sarah's mother. All of it seemed to evaporate in the face of their newer, shinier family dynamic. As I sat in that third row, watching my ex-husband escort our daughter down the aisle while his wife dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, I felt the weight of every compromise I'd made. Every time I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace, every time I'd stepped back to make room for their comfort. I didn't know that my son-in-law Michael had been watching this unfold for months. I didn't know he'd been planning something that would change everything. All I knew was that I felt invisible, and I was tired of disappearing. The ceremony proceeded like clockwork, each moment choreographed to perfection. I watched through a haze of suppressed emotions as Sarah and Michael exchanged vows, their words of love and commitment floating over the congregation like music. But even in this sacred moment, I felt like an outsider looking in. When the officiant asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" my heart clenched. I knew what was coming. My ex-husband stepped forward with his practiced smile, the same one he'd used in boardroom presentations, and declared, "Her mother and I do." The words felt hollow, a performance for the crowd. Linda squeezed his arm possessively, as if she'd earned the right to be included in that statement. But then something unexpected happened. Michael, my soon-to-be son-in-law, turned toward the congregation. His eyes found mine in that third row, and for a moment, the entire church seemed to hold its breath. Instead of facing forward to continue the ceremony, he spoke directly to me. Actually, his voice carried clearly through the sanctuary. "I'd like to say something." The officiant looked confused. Sarah's eyes widened, and I felt my heart stop. This wasn't in the program. This wasn't planned. Sarah's real strength, her kindness, her resilience, all of that came from one person. Michael continued, his gaze never leaving mine. The woman who worked 2 jobs to put her through college. The woman who taught her that love isn't about what you can buy, but what you're willing to sacrifice. The woman who showed her how to stand up for herself, even when the world tries to make her invisible. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Linda's face flushed red. My ex-husband shifted uncomfortably. But Michael wasn't finished. "Mrs. Collins," he said, using my maiden name, the name I'd reclaimed after my divorce, "would you please stand?" My legs felt like water, but somehow I rose from that 3rd row. Every eye in the church now focused on me. For the first time in months, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. Standing there in that 3rd row, I felt exposed and vulnerable, like a deer caught in headlights. Part of me wanted to sit back down, to blend into the background where I'd learned to exist. The old me would have smiled politely and deflected the attention. But Michael's words had cracked something open inside my chest, a dam I'd built to hold back years of swallowed pride and silent sacrifices. My hands trembled as I remained standing, feeling the weight of 300 pairs of eyes on me. I could see Linda's shocked expression, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide her indignation. My ex-husband looked like he'd swallowed something sour, his jaw clenched in that familiar way that used to signal an argument was coming. But it was Sarah's face that nearly broke me. My daughter was crying, not the delicate tears of a bride, but deep, soul-shaking sobs that told me she'd been carrying this burden too. The burden of watching her mother be diminished, pushed aside, treated like a footnote in her own story. How long had she wanted to speak up? How many times had she bitten her tongue to keep the peace, just like I had? "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice carrying in the sudden silence of the church. "I'm so sorry for letting them make you feel small." The words hit me like a physical blow. All this time, I thought I was protecting her by staying quiet, by not making waves, by accepting whatever scraps of recognition they threw my way. But I'd been teaching her the wrong lesson. I'd been showing her that women should accept being erased for the sake of everyone else's comfort. 25 years of marriage where I'd made myself smaller to make room for his ego. 18 years of single motherhood where I'd worked myself to the bone. And now, months of wedding planning where I'd watched myself disappear piece by piece. When had I decided that my love for my daughter meant accepting disrespect? When had I confused sacrifice with self-erasure? Michael was still looking at me, waiting. The entire church was waiting. And for the first time in years, I had a choice to make. The silence in the church stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. I could feel the collective breath of 300 guests waiting for my response. My ex-husband cleared his throat, a warning I knew all too well, the same sound he used to make when I was about to embarrass him at company dinners or social events. "Perhaps we should continue with the ceremony," he said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that had once made me shrink. "This isn't really the appropriate time for what?" Michael interrupted, and I watched my ex-husband's face flush with surprise. Nobody interrupted Richard Thompson. For acknowledging the woman who actually raised my wife. For recognizing the person who taught Sarah everything that made me fall in love with her. Linda stood up abruptly, her designer heels clicking against the wooden floor. "This is highly inappropriate," she hissed, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "Richard, do something." But Sarah found her voice before her father could respond. "No," the word rang out clear and strong, stopping Linda mid-stride. "This is my wedding, and Michael is right." She turned to face the congregation, her wedding dress rustling like angel wings. "My mother deserves to be honored today, not hidden." The tension in the room was suffocating. I could see guests shifting uncomfortably, some nodding in agreement, others looking scandalized. The wedding photographer had stopped taking pictures, unsure whether to document this unscripted moment. The officiant stood frozen, his ceremony notes suddenly useless. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized this was the moment I'd been avoiding for years, the moment where staying silent was no longer an option. Every compromise I'd made, every time I'd accepted less than I deserved, every instance where I'd let others define my worth had led to this crossroads. "Mom," Sarah's voice broke through my internal storm, "please, let them see you. Really see you." Michael extended his hand toward me, an invitation that felt like a lifeline. "Mrs. Collins, would you join us?" You've been the mother of the bride all along. It's time everyone acknowledged that. The walk from the third row to the altar felt like walking through fire. Each step was a declaration, a reclamation of space I'd been denied. Behind me, I could hear whispers erupting like small explosions. Ahead of me, my daughter waited with tears streaming down her face, and my new son-in-law stood ready to right a wrong that had been festering for months. As I walked down that aisle, the same aisle I should have walked down with Sarah at the beginning of the ceremony, every step felt like shedding a layer of invisibility I'd wrapped around myself for too long. The guests' faces blurred past me, some shocked, some moved, others clearly uncomfortable with this disruption of their carefully ordered world. When I reached the altar, Michael took my hand and guided me to stand beside Sarah. For the first time in months, I was where I belonged, next to my daughter, in the place of honor that should have been mine from the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael addressed the congregation, his voice steady and clear. I want you to meet the woman who made this day possible, not through financial contributions or social connections, but through love, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication. My ex-husband's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is completely out of line, he started to say, but Sarah cut him off. Dad, stop. Her voice carried a strength I'd never heard before. For once in your life, just stop and listen. She turned to face the congregation, still holding my hand. My mother worked 2 jobs to pay for my dance lessons when I was 8. She slept on the couch for 3 years so I could have the bigger bedroom. She sold her grandmother's ring to help pay for my college tuition. The church had gone completely silent. Even the babies seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. She taught me that love isn't about what you can provide materially, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. It's about showing up day after day, even when you're exhausted. It's about putting someone else's dreams before your own. It's about being there for the small moments that nobody else sees. Michael squeezed my other hand. When Sarah told me about her childhood, about the woman who raised her, I knew I was marrying someone special. But I also knew that woman deserved to be celebrated, not hidden in the back row like some distant relative. The tears I'd been holding back for months finally broke free. Not tears of sadness or humiliation, but tears of recognition. For the first time in years, someone was seeing me, really seeing me, and refusing to let me be erased. So before we continue with this ceremony, Michael announced, I want everyone here to understand something. This wedding isn't just about Sarah and me starting our life together. It's about honoring the woman who made Sarah into the incredible person she is today. He turned to me, his eyes sincere and kind. Mrs. Collins, you didn't just give birth to my wife. You shaped her character, her values, her strength. You taught her how to love unconditionally and how to stand up for what's right. And today, in front of all these people, I want to say thank you. The applause started slowly, from somewhere in the middle of the church. Then it grew, spreading like wildfire until the entire congregation was on their feet, clapping for me, for my sacrifices, for my love, for my worth as Sarah's mother. Standing there at the altar, holding my daughter's hand while 300 people acknowledged what I'd always known but had been afraid to claim, that I mattered, that my love had value, that I deserved to be seen, I finally understood what it meant to take up space without apologizing for it. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur of joy and vindication. I stood beside Sarah as she and Michael exchanged rings, no longer a spectator but a participant in this sacred moment. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Michael did something that will stay with me forever. He hugged me first, before kissing his bride. Welcome to the family, Mom, he whispered in my ear, and I realized that someone had finally seen me not as the ex-wife, not as the woman who'd been replaced, but as Sarah's mother. The title I'd earned through sleepless nights, scraped knees, homework battles, and unconditional love. At the reception, everything changed. Guests who had barely acknowledged me before approached with genuine warmth, sharing stories about their own mothers, their own struggles with feeling invisible. The photographer asked for special portraits of Sarah and me, just the two of us, mother and daughter, no one else's permission required. Linda avoided me for the rest of the evening, but my ex-husband surprised me during the father-daughter dance. You raised a good woman, he said quietly as we watched Sarah and Michael sway to their wedding song. It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that's enough. As the evening wound down, Sarah found me on the terrace, still in her wedding dress but barefoot now, her veil trailing behind her like stardust. "Mom, I'm sorry it took Michael to make me brave enough to do what I should have done months ago," she said, tears glistening in the moonlight. "Sweetheart," I replied, pulling her close, "sometimes we need someone from the outside to help us see what we've been too close to recognize. You found a man who sees your worth and by extension mine. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to celebrate." That night, I learned that being invisible isn't a natural consequence of aging or divorce or life's disappointments. It's a choice we make when we forget our own value. And sometimes, it takes a moment of public recognition to remember that we were never meant to disappear, we were meant to shine. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, remember this: your worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it. You matter. Your sacrifices matter. Your love matters. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when the world tries to silence it. Because every woman deserves to be seen, celebrated, and honored not just on special occasions, but every single day. Sometimes the most powerful moment in our lives is when someone else refuses to let us disappear.